This time around, I wanted to bring something a little different. There's been so much talk about being a Daniel in the last 15, 20, or even more years in the church. A lot of that centers around some of it spiritual warfare and prayer, some of it fasting, but a lot of it has centered around political ambition or changing the nation through prayer and fasting, or being a Daniel, being present in places with wisdom and insight. But it's morphed into something more, where being a Daniel represents dominating or dominion, which Daniel never did. We're going to get into all that in just a second, but let me back up. Daniel in the Hebraic Old Testament, in the Christian Old Testament, was a prophetic book, and it's a fascinating book. It was written in a couple different languages, and because of that, there are disputes about it. One of my favorite controversies about Daniel is some believe that it was written a lot later than more conservative scholars and leaders in the church. A lot of conservative leaders believe that it was written before the events recorded, or it was written about Daniel's life and before the events Daniel prophesies about in the book. That perspective says this is a historical book recording Daniel's life, preserving things he spoke about the future, and it was relaying those events before they happened. A more, what in biblical terms might be called liberal, or one that doesn't believe the Bible is inerrant, or that the Bible could speak of things future, or doesn't believe it's possible, says Daniel's book is a historic story, probably pieced together by different people, and it was compiled and put together after certain historical events, because Daniel's foretelling of those events was so accurate they could not have happened beforehand. Now, if you believe that God is God and can speak to people and can relay things ahead of time, which the entire Bible is based off of, there's no reason to believe it if Christ wasn't prophesied, if Moses couldn't say what happened before Moses and talk about creation. Most of the Bible disappears without dreams, visions, and prophetic revelation. Over 2/3 of it just disappears. And the rest of it, if you don't believe those things, you will think is just stories made up to control people, or to contrive stories to drive meaning from events that have no meaning beyond earth. In fact, heaven has brought forth in the earth purpose and destiny for people. Jesus Christ, of course, is the pinnacle of this, the Son of God who died for the sins of the world. But God has given us incredible and great promises, but also every good thing comes from heaven. Not only a Bible, but your life can be interpreted not by what you see with your eyes, but what God has given and will give you to come. And you know that based upon revelation. The Christian life has no hope if there is no Jesus didn't raise from the dead, and what he said about the future and us being raised with him isn't true. There's no Christian faith. There's no dogma strong enough to hold together if God did not institute this faith. Not that we should have dogma, so to speak, in that sense, in the negative sense, but we should have firm and unwavering beliefs that Jesus is the Son of God. He came as a servant. He came in the form of a servant, and he died a criminal death on the cross for our sins. Now, if you're a Christian, you're saying, man, you're going over some basics now. That's awesome, but what does this have to do with Daniel? When you look at Daniel's life, we have to look at what actually happened, not what we want it to be. Just as someone can't go back, can't look at it and say, I don't believe you can foretell these things. Therefore, this book could not have been written then. I will eradicate all historical evidence and find my own, because it's impossible to tell the future. There's nothing scientific about that approach. There's nothing desirable about that approach. You just kind of throw away something you don't understand and replace it with what makes you comfortable and what makes you stay the same, and cannot touch God in heaven and accept what Jesus has done or says. If he can't say things, if he can't break in, if he's not God, he's not God. He's just not. If he can't say those things, he's just not God. He might be the God of another religion that isn't a God, but he's not the God of the Christian faith. It just doesn't happen. And so when you look at the Bible and we look at Daniel, I can't go into it and say, well, he couldn't have foretold that, so I'm going to make it what I want. I also can't go into it and say, make Daniel into what fits my context. I can't make Daniel into somebody who he never was. One thing he never was politically ambitious. Daniel did not have political ambition. Daniel was a refugee stolen from his homeland. His parents were probably killed by Nebuchadnezzar and his army. Nebuchadnezzar or his general probably oversaw that and then brought them back, brought Daniel and other royal or royal-ish, like children of nobility, to be trained, because they would have been trained better than others back then. They brought the nobility as a prize, their kids, to Babylon. These guys were trained and given royal food to look good, to be strong, and to serve Nebuchadnezzar, the one who'd killed their parents. We would call this slavery. We would call this evil. We would call this war crimes. You can go on and on in our time. The Bible just relays it as a historic event. As Daniel is being raised, probably from the age of 14 or 15, in Babylon, he can see from the city he lives, and if he desires, he can look out down the Shebar Canal and see other refugees from the country, from Israel, his kinsmen, basically in a refugee camp just down the river. There's a psalm about this. On the rivers of Babylon, we laid our harps. We didn't have any more songs to sing. We were so broken. We'd lost our homeland. We lost promises. We lost everything. It's just too much, and we just wept. That psalm is about the people sitting by this river as Daniel's in the city. Ezekiel was prophet by this river as Daniel's in this city. Daniel's put in a very uncomfortable position. He's not there by ambition. He did not put himself there. And really, Daniels do not put themselves in the place God has for them. Daniels are not. In the book of Daniel, for the most of the book, he's not a political leader. He is serving someone who's evil. We might say that in our day, he's serving another administration. He is someone's in the administration of an opposite political party and serving that person's agenda with love in their heart for that person. He is a Republican loving Joe Biden. He's a Democrat who loves President Trump, although he doesn't believe anything that person stands for. And he believes that God has put that person there, and he will serve him loyally from his heart because God has instituted him as leader. That is a crisis for many Americans. That would be unacceptable for many Americans. And that's why many Americans cannot be Daniels. When you are fighting tooth and nail against another political agenda, you cannot be a Daniel. When you are argumentative and you are slamming and slandering leaders, you cannot be a Daniel. When you are fasting and praying for other people's downfall, you cannot be a Daniel. Daniel served them. He said to Nebuchadnezzar, and he said to Belshazzar, he said to all these guys, he said, actually to Nebuchadnezzar, when he had the dream that was terrible, foretold, what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, 7 years of just living like an animal, he said, may this dream be for your enemies. So in the Bible, Daniel is not someone who tries to climb a political ladder to influence the culture. Daniel is someone who is submitted to God, prays faithfully, and loves people around him no matter what. And God lifts him to a place of influence. God gives him spiritual insight. When all of the prophets, all of the soothsayers, all of the so-called seers or Chaldeans or magic men or whatever, fabricate what they have in order to advance themselves and to look important in front of political leaders and other people, Daniel does not do this. Now let's back up a little bit. Let's start from the beginning again. When Daniel's brought into Babylon, the first thing that these children are given is Babylonian food, great food, and they're fed well. They're treated well. They're brought in, and maybe it's a little bit of the Stockholm, syndrome. Like they're trying to make these they're giving them the best of the land, going to train them and going to just turn them into the best statesmen they can, or servants of Nebuchadnezzar that they can. Daniel says, I don't want to eat the king's food. Please just bring me vegetables. And so we call that a Daniel fast, and that's good. Fasts are good. It's good to abstain from certain things. Fasting means empty stomach. It's good to fast. If all you do is fast candy or coffee, whatever, it can be a good thing. But fasting, what Daniel was doing, he wasn't trying to abstain from food. He was trying to abstain from defiled food. He's trying to abstain from forbidden foods. There are foods that the law forbids he's not able to eat. Probably what he realized was that Babylonian food was ritually unclean. He couldn't control how it was cooked. He couldn't control how it was brought forth. It was not kosher. Put it that way. He wasn't abstaining from food. He was abstaining from sin. Daniel did not have a 21-day fast to eradicate protein and put himself in a certain place so he could pray more powerfully. He was saying no to the things God told him to say no to. Again, Daniel fasts are good. Special diets are good. Doing it for natural reasons, spiritual reasons, whatever. I'm not judging that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's not necessarily what Daniel's doing. Do you see, I'm just kind of running around hitting these things. Do you kind of see how our view of Daniel, we've placed him in America and made him like us, when in fact he wasn't like us? Daniel would pray facing Jerusalem with his windows open. He wasn't praying for his destiny, he was praying for his nation to be restored. Do you see how different this is? There's a current teaching on the 7 mountains of influence. There's a lot of good things that Christians want to do. They want to walk with Jesus, be salt and light in the world, and they realize that as they do that they can change the culture around them. If you want to take Daniel as a template, you're going to have to serve and love people that aren't like you. If you want to take Daniel as a template, you might be put in places where your kinsmen and the people like you cannot go. If you want to serve as a Daniel's just different. I would encourage you to study Daniel. I encourage you to look at Daniel. Daniel does not call himself a dream interpreter, although he interprets dreams. He does not call himself a prophet, although he receives visions and end-time revelation. You see that he presses into God and to know God, and at times he does fast, full-on fast. At times he does encounter God in such a way where it's like his life leaves him. He sees future events with such profound specificity and with such an encounter of the reality of it, not just by seeing, but in his body he captures the substance of it, that he makes him sick. He encounters angels to such a degree that he falls on his face and they have to kind of get him back up and say, listen, you are loved by God. You are loved by God. Just like God spoke of John, who received revelation, and that profound revelation, future events, and he was called beloved of God. So Daniel, who has shared this profound things, was called beloved of God. Daniel experienced spiritual, future, and present realities at an uncanny degree. He had visceral reactions to other people getting hurt. He had a tangible response in action of fasting and prayer when faced with certain death. Like, there are things that he was that are different than us. Does that make sense? Like, he was gritty. He took these things and he would pray through it. He wouldn't just do this, I'd pray to prayer, and if I believe it's going to come to pass. That you don't even ever see anyone describe prayer or faith that way in the Bible. I could get into that, but I can go very deep down that rabbit hole in the Bible. Prayer of faith continues until it sees the substance. There are times you can declare. There are times you can pray quick and know God's going to do it. And you have that assurance. There are people that are gifted with that kind of faith. But let's not project it on everyone, because it's not biblically represented that way with Daniel. It's not represented that way in the New Covenant as far as prayer. And I can back that up. And so when you look at Daniel, when you look at somebody who obtained the promises and shifted nations, at 90 years of age, he was probably no longer in Babylon. He was in Susa, in the book of Esther, with the Israelites there. He was serving in the place that his captor had originally been. Nebuchadnezzar had ruled over a large part of the world. His kingdom was absorbed into the Persian kingdom. And Daniel was the satrap, or the head over much of what Nebuchadnezzar used to have under this new guy. Daniel was consistent. He had integrity. He was able to serve those that weren't like him, and with such integrity that he was able to stay there. I just could keep going. There is so much in the book of Daniel. I want to encourage you to take your Western lens off of it. Take your view of what politics and influence means, and see God in heaven absolutely invade a life, put in a situation that he did not want to be in. He did not. Do you think 14-year-old Daniel would have rather been in Babylon eating steamed vegetables, or back home with his parents alive again? I don't know what circumstance you're in. I don't know what you've gone through, but I bet there's somebody that's going to watch this that are in circumstances, been through things you never wanted to go through. And you don't necessarily even want it to set you up for something better, but maybe that's the beginning of a true Daniel. Maybe you're in the place where you're going to abstain from evil. You're going to abstain from the things that would defile. You're going to be gritty with the circumstances God's given you and press in. You're going to allow him to treat you as his beloved, to allow him to speak things to you that he can't speak to others. I don't know. Maybe I'm out on a limb here. Bless you guys. I know this one was a little different. If you want more of this, you can subscribe, you can like, comment, whatever it is. We'd hope to see you again back here next week. This is Anton.